Sam Marshall shares uplifting stories and conversations with people making Johannesburg and the world a better place.
Yeah, exactly. We have conversations with people and organizations and institutions that are making South Africa and the world a much better place. Now, get this. 5 years ago, in the midst of COVID-19 crisis, Pick n Pay launched an initiative called Feed the Nation to provide urgent food relief. What started as a response to an emergency has grown into a nationwide movement that has now delivered over, I want you to listen to this, over 45 million meals. It's supported over 272,000 families and has reached nearly 600 schools across the country. Joining me on the line, I assume from Cape Town, which could be anywhere in the world, is Suzanne Ackerman, who's a non-executive director of the Pick n Pay Stores Group, and she's going to talk to us about this journey and reflect on it. Suzanne, good morning and thanks for joining me.
Good morning from a wet, windy Cape Town.
Oh, so we can confirm that you are in the mother city.
I am. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. I mean, that's just staggering. So take us back to 2020. There was this crisis we could not have imagined on an epic level. What was happening and why was this the solution that was born out of that crisis?
You know what? I think, Sam, first of all, thanks for having us here. And I don't think we want to look back on that time because it was so unreal to us all. And what happened when we went into lockdown, it was the day after, let's go back a week before it was announced that we'd go into lockdown. Remember, we had all those meetings with the president, what were they called, on a Sunday night? And he said, we have to lock the country down. On Monday morning, before we were all locked and sent to home, we were in our offices, and one by one, the stores started phoning me and saying, what are we going to do? This was right around the country, because we deliver food to schools, and the school children rely on one meal a day. And particularly those kids who are in child-headed households rely on that one meal a day. Now, how on earth are children age 11 who look after their siblings, no parents, some of them very elderly grandparents, supposed to handle social grants, find a meal, do homeschooling, and everything that was expected of them during that time? We all thought, my God, we have to do something. We have an obligation as an organization that was founded by my parents, and my father, the late Raymond Ackerman, always believed that doing good is good business.
Yes.
And particularly in a time of crisis. And this was a crisis beyond anything we'd ever known. So we went, should I carry on?
Yeah, of course, we're listening.
Oh, sorry.
We're
Okay.
listening.
I just thought there was something on the line. And then I approached our board and the CEO at the time, and I said, we have to do something. And he said, Suzanne, please, we are what you call a frontline operation. We have certain requirements. We have to close half our stores down because I don't know if you remember, Sam, I'm sure you do. You couldn't buy a frying pan. You couldn't buy
anything. Nothing.
You couldn't buy a cooked chicken, if you remember. We were only allowed to sell raw chickens. It was bizarre. So half our stores were closed off only for essential items. So we had all these people in the clothing divisions, in our hypermarkets, who were sent home, and everyone was fearful for their jobs. And I don't know, it just came to me, why don't we start making food hampers for the schools that we know on impact? And I got a call the very next day from a man in England. He said, Suzanne, I've heard about you and what Pick n Pay does. You're the only ones we trust. We're giving you 4 million rand. Start packing. And I thought, oh my goodness.
Wow.
I phoned the CEO and I said, we as a family are going to match that. So we have starting capital. We're going to reach out to the buyers and the farmers, and we are going to start making hampers for those in need.
But I want to jump in there quickly because, you know, as I'm listening to you, Suzanne, I just, it takes me back to those moments and I get goosebumps because I remember that first couple of weeks, the level of uncertainty, people not sure what was going to happen. The phone calls with our families that we haven't seen, we weren't seeing our friends. Everything that was normal was disrupted. And then you come up with this idea and you go like, listen, we've got to roll up our sleeves. We've got to get involved. But I think what is even more remarkable, Suzanne, is that 5 years later, we're looking at numbers that I don't know if there's a social impact Guinness world records thing that you can break, but 45 million meals, right? 215 million rand in food aid. If you consider that 272,000 families, 600 schools across the country, I mean, that is just absolutely mind-blowing. At what point did it go from this knee-jerk reaction in this crisis moment to this kind of long-term, far-reaching, sustainable project?
I don't know if sustainable is the right word, to be honest, because we never expected this to happen. And to me, that is the saddest reflection of the society in which we live, that the need out there is so enormous that we have never stopped packing food hampers like we did during the crisis, because the needs are bigger than we could ever imagine. And the crisis is there. Sam, it's there. Every single one of us looks on the street corners and remarks how many more people are living on the streets, how many people are in the queues for the social grants. The needs are so enormous. Maybe it's not the urgent crisis that people like the DHL delivery guys weren't getting paid or the Uber drivers were not getting paid. Those were all services that we relied on. Then people it stopped from one day to the next. But the greater society is still in a state of crisis. In a first world country where access to water and food is a human right, we don't have that luxury. It's a luxury in South Africa or on the African continent, sadly.
Yeah. You know, what I loved about the campaign, and I think I always tell people that it's easy to build a rocket ship. It's incredibly difficult to change people's lives. Because there's just so many dynamics, and you're dealing with so many moving parts. But what I loved about the Feed the Nation, now that we reflect, and it's quite interesting, we're looking at 5 years in the year that South Africa is or has been thrusted into the spotlight for many different reasons, whether that is the issues with the ICJ and Israel, whether that is with our issues with America, our trade challenges with America, perception issues with America, cutting its food programs, its social impact programs to the rest of the continent. In this year, we are also in the year of G20, which is a big focus on South Africa. We're also in the month of the national dialogue, which is, depending on which side of the line you're on, it's a good or a bad thing. So there's just so much happening this year. And what I loved about Feed the Nation and us reflecting on it is that I thought, for me, that it blended food security with dignity, with restoring dignity. And I wonder if, and I always think, is that intentional, or is that just a byproduct of wanting to help immediately? And then obviously the clever people come around the table and go, well, we're actually ticking these boxes and those boxes.
Dignity is a very important value that I think one learns when you have a lot and others do not have. The one thing that people try to retain is their dignity. It doesn't matter how poverty knocks at your door. You want to retain a certain amount of dignity. And it's that very old adage, give someone a fish, give them a fishing rod rather than the fish. But sadly, they can't accept a fishing rod if they haven't actually got any access to food. So by giving them basic foodstuffs, and they can actually do with it what they want. So we're not saying, oh, you have to make a butternut soup because we're giving you butternut. We give them the basics, and they will do with the basics what they need to do, and that is refining dignity.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very, as you've said, the need, for whatever reason, feels like it grows every day. We've got massive unemployment. We seem to have sometimes leadership that seems directionless. And in the midst of all of that, you've had this program running now for 5 years. I want you just to reflect for me also, as you reflect on the 5 years, in the context of what's happening this year in 2025, with all the aid that's been cut from countries like South Africa and the rest of the African continent. Obviously, there's also an opportunity for self-resilience, for self-reflection, for opportunities to innovate old systems like we did in COVID. But as a leader, as somebody and I know for some of us that have been following you for years, we know that you eat, live, and sleep this stuff. This is not PR. This is what you believe. This is the hill that you're willing to die on. How do you reflect on the year that we're in and 5 years of Feed the Nation?
Wow, that's a heavy question for 10 o'clock in the morning. But
We had our coffee at 6. So
no, I was swimming at 6 in the wet ocean. Do you know what, Sam? I think doing business is a conscious decision. And one needs not only a social conscious, but a good business conscious practice. We need to put back into society more than we take out. That is our responsibility as business people. That is our responsibility as privilege. What is privilege? Privilege, in my opinion, is being able to identify that you have that society has given you so much, whether it's education, whether it's values, whether it's kindness. You have been privileged to receive. It's our obligation to give back. And I truly, truly believe that in a social context, in a business context, and in a religious context. And the chaos and the crisis that's going on around the world with this lack of leadership and everything that's happening, this is the time that we as individuals with hearts, minds, and souls need to stand up and say, I can make that difference, and I will make that difference. I will not be corrupt. I will do what is right for society and what is right for me. And I think now more than ever, we need to appeal to people to find that conscious element in them.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, one of the things the mandate of this show is a very simple mandate. Our job is this show, 9 to 12, Mondays to Fridays. We only do positive news. We only interview the people that are changing the country for better. That is our mandate. There's no negative news. We're not talking about rape, murder, fraud. We also want to spotlight the institutions, individuals, and organizations that I think do the heavy lifting. And I think for the longest time, and maybe it's not a fair thing to say, but I'll say it anyway, that people don't really know the amount of social impact good work that Pick n Pay does. And I am privileged because I'm a social impact journalist. I'm on your newsletter feeds. I get to see the work that you do at schools, that you do with suppliers, the amount of work that you put out. And I am in my era, in my 50s, all about driving conscious consumers. I want consumers to be conscious about where they spend their money, who they spend their money with, because the money you spend with those institutions and organizations go directly back into the communities you drive through on a daily basis. And I wonder if you've thought about what that means, because Brand South Africa has talked about we don't tell enough good stories. The African Development Bank president has asked that this is the time that Africa starts telling its good stories. I wonder how you as a leader reflect on that.
I understand from a journalist's perspective that you need the stories, and a platform like yours is phenomenal. There are not enough of it. But we as a business, it's part and parcel of the DNA in the business that we have as Pick n Pay. And that's why my parents founded it 50, nearly 60 years ago. It was to address the needs of society and give them better options, better opportunities, and give back to society. So it's part of our DNA. And I know we don't shout about things enough, but we inherently do the right thing. As I said earlier, our motto is doing good is good business. Some can argue and say, okay, it's good for business. Yes, that's fine. But you're giving back to society. And that's what I found over this journey of last 5 years, that there are so many like-minded organizations out there in South Africa who want to do the right thing. And they put their hands up and said, we will partner you. we'll partner you. We want to do it. We're not doing it for the bright lights. We're not doing it for the name in the press. We're doing it because we share the common values.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I also I'll push back a little and say that in the age of 2025, where everything is online, where the one with the loud hailer is the one that gets noticed the most, that I think brands have to bring their consumers along, and we've seen it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think about 60 years ago, you talk about the work that Pick and Pay has done, and for many organizations, you've kind of led the way. But we're now in the era, KFC has raised R1 billion off just the R2 donations, and that's consumers getting involved. Food Lovers Market, just through their 50-cent meals, have contributed nearly 7.5 million rand in terms of meals. McDonald's has the R5 campaign, so does Tears. And I think a lot Pick and Pay has led a lot of that before it was even fashionable to do these things. And you talk about partnerships, and I also love kind of how you've been able to collaborate with partners. And some of the partners you've worked with is the Khaleesi Foundation, Medea, Sasanda Foundation, in Causey's Haven. You've worked with some really strategic partners, and I think the value in true partnership is understanding your shortcomings and going to find partners that are able to execute in those environments.
Exactly. And during that COVID time, that was absolutely vital because we needed to transport. Almost like at one stage, I can tell you a fantastic story. Um, all the airplanes were grounded. Do you remember that? And all the
Yes.
stock that was destined to be exported, the farmers were crying, devastated. It was being held at the airports. I phoned up the airport and I said at Lanseria Airport, can we use an airport hangar? They said, with pleasure. And there the farmers came and delivered all the butternuts, the potatoes, everything that was destined to go to the UAE or to fly overseas on export was grounded, and it was all donated. So we got hundreds, literally thousands of volunteers from churches, organizations to come and pack. And in one weekend, we made 37,000 hampers from an airport hangar and were able to transport them out. And we just phoned up the likes of DHL, Unitrans, Coca-Cola, and said, please, we need your trucks. The truck drivers were there, boom, and some of them even painted out the name on the trucks, because if you remember, you were only allowed to deliver essential items.
Yeah.
So if Kellogg's was helping us, it was not regarded as an essential item. We had to kind of paint the name out of the truck. So, we did what we had to do to get food to those in most need, and that was extraordinary.
As we wrap up the conversation, my second last question to you is, and it's a bit of a loaded question, but I want to ask you this, and I know you've thought about this. We often have lots of challenges, but there's just so many organizations and institutions that are trying to do their level best, right? And the list is long. I mean, if you look at Trilog says there's about under 12 billion rands worth of social impact. If you speak to Chikalulu or Rihanna Rousseau or any of the other guys, they'll tell you maybe the number's a little bit more. With so much intervention, with so much corporates, with so much organizations that are doing their bit, why do you think we're still so siloed? Why are we not coming around? Why are we not having a national dialogue as social impact guys and saying, I'm doing this, you're doing this, so that we can actually really measure the impact? Because it feels like there's so many players in the space trying to do good, and yet it feels like the challenges that we're facing, they seem insurmountable.
I think you've just answered your own question. That's exactly what it is. That's what, if there is a lot going on, there's a lot of collaboration, there's a lot of talking. We speak to other foundations all the time to see how can we collaborate. And it's not about getting those accolades for yourself. It's about achieving what's right for that community in need. There is a lot going on. And when you get into a community, you'll find out that other people are there doing the same thing. I agree there could be more getting together and having better conversations about greater impact. But I think the need is so enormous that it's very difficult to measure whether the impact is going there. It's kind of like the starfish analogy. You make a difference to that starfish.
Yeah. And my final question, Suzanne, thank you very much for your time. 5 years of Feed the Nation. What's next?
We want to move into a more sustainable space because just giving food is like, as I said, just giving the fish. We have already set up over 550 food gardens in communities, in small areas around schools, and training individuals from communities how to generate an income from a food garden, whether it's to sell the goods to the community, supply into our franchise supermarkets, make into a soup kitchen, but teaching people how to do food gardening in order to be sustainable. So that's where we hope to go.
Suzanne Ackerman, a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully, when you're in Johannesburg next, we can get you in the studio to come and talk to us
Thank
a little
you.
bit longer.
I'd love to. Thanks, Sam, and thanks for all you and your team do. It's great.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time. That's Suzanne Ackerman talking to us. She's a non-executive director of the Pick n Pay Stores Group, and she's reflecting on this journey. It's 5 years ago, in the midst of COVID-19 crisis, that Pick n Pay launched an initiative called Feed the Nation to provide urgent food relief. And what started as a response to an emergency has grown into a nationwide movement that now has delivered. And I started this at the beginning, telling you the numbers. 45 million meals, supported 272,000 families, and reached nearly 600 schools. And obviously, this is important. So now that we know, we can do better. And we're all about driving conscious consumerism. So next time when you drive past Pick n Pay, remember that they've, in the last 5 years, have provided 45 million meals to other South Africans.